What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the next episode of JAG Woodworking. I originally planned on this being just a short, but I ended up filming so much that I feel like there was a lot cut out in that short, so I decided to give y'all a more in-depth walkthrough of what it is I did here. So pretty much I'm just taking these pieces, a quick outline of where I wanted the saw to sit, doing some quick cuts here, getting everything lined up, getting these holes pre-drilled, ready to go. So with this piece, not only is it going to be extra support for the weight of the saw itself, so I can use a little bit bigger screws, but I'm also making it big enough that it can bypass where all of these segments of the tabletop are. So that way I can get a little extra support to the table overall. So I'm going to go a little heavy on these nails. Again, I'm a beginner, so I don't know the exact amount to use in certain situations, but I'm just glue for support, nails to hold it in place. The nails are going to give it a little extra support. Rather be safe than sorry here. So just getting that connected. Like again, there's the overlap, so y'all can see that better for the support. Now I'm cutting the hole here. I did go back and I made a couple more passes, widened out the hole, made it a little bit longer, so that way there was plenty of room for the saw to move around, so it wasn't going to hit on anything no matter what depth or angle I moved it at. Originally, I was going to cut this out to where I could turn the saw to a 45 to put miters on material, but with the extra board on there, making it an inch total thickness, that was just kind of a bit too much. So this little adapter here I just picked up from Lowe's, little on-off switch to make it easier for the saw, so I'm not constantly trying to deal with pulling the trigger, moving everything, get everything set in place. This just makes it easier. So here I am pretty much building a rail for everything to run across, try and get it as parallel to the table as possible. So being perfectly perpendicular and parallel to everything is ideal, and that's what you're going to get with a real table saw. But my main goal with this is just making sure everything is going to be as close to straight with the blade. So I straightened it to this edge, this front edge of the table here. So I know if I run most of my measurements and everything off of this front edge, it'll be nice and straight to the blade, and I will show that a little bit later as well. As far as everything lining up. So here, I just have my level and an additional piece of the 2x3, and they're just kind of clamped to the table to give me support while I run this across. So again, it can be as straight and perpendicular as possible. Gonna do 2 cuts here, and this is going to make the actual, I forget what the name of the piece is. I'll edit it in here what the name is when I look it up. But the piece that your material runs across, that'll help you set your depth. So those pieces, the saw here is only able to cut 1.5 inch depth. So I decided if I make this 2 inches, that'll be slightly bigger than anything I could run through here. That'll give me plenty of stability. I'm pretty sure on an actual table saw it's a little bit taller than that, but for this purpose, this will be perfect. Now, whenever you're using the nail gun here, they have a tendency to shoot off to one side or the other a little bit. For the most part, you can usually line it up top and bottom with the tool, and those are the ways it's going to want to move around. If it does, it can move side to side as well. A little bit later on, when I put a piece together, I'll show you where it did that with the nail. And I promise that lined up a whole lot better in person. I just couldn't get a good angle on it for the video. So again, I have some push sticks here that I just made out of the corner pieces of like cardboard packaging. Like we bought our fridge, they have those really thick, heavy corner pieces. So it's a nice sturdy material that I can use as a push rod. And so again, like I said, getting everything lined up off of this front edge. So I'm screwing this down so that way I will have the ability to disassemble later. If you're doing this and you just want it permanent table saw, nothing else, feel free to just nail this down or glue it or however you want to connect it. But I wanted the ability to be able to break this down and use it as a flat tabletop other than just the table saw. And you always want to use these push sticks. Keep your fingers away from the material, so that way if anything happens, if the blade catches the material or if something slips, something breaks, whatever, it's just these little sticks getting caught in the blade and not your hands. So here I'm taking all of these little pieces that I just cut, putting them all together, and I'm kind of making like a U, so that way it can sit on that little track piece we put on the bottom of the table earlier. And here, like I said, those nails have a tendency to shoot out, so just always keep your fingers clear. And this here, perfect example of why you want to use the push sticks. So when you're getting to this smaller material and it's a little bit harder to hold, it can move around. And so there, if I was holding that with my hand, there would have been the potential for my hand to get pulled into the blade because I'm trying to hold the material. So instead, the stick got a little close to it, the piece fell on the ground, and I'm safe and clear. So I just added that piece to the bottom because I'm going to be putting some threaded inserts in here, and I didn't feel like the actual bottom of this piece was going to be enough material for that to hold on to securely. So I put that little extra piece on the bottom, threaded insert in, and now I am cutting this up to make some makeshift little knobs as handles for this. Lovely camera angles here, JAG. Absolute peak performance. Nobody can do better. But I'm just taking these little squares, drilling 1/4-inch holes in them. Then I'm going to take some sandpaper, round out the edges, not doing anything precise or to measurement. It's more of just as long as it feels good in the hand. That's the only thing that matters here. And so, like I said, just screw that onto the bottom, and so that way it'll come up and clamp onto that track we put there. Originally, I was just gonna put 2 threaded inserts on the front side of it, so that way they would grab down onto the front of that track. But as I was doing this, I noticed that the the front end, the end closest to me of this wall was very secure, but the top end was still extremely loose. Like I probably would have had an inch, maybe inch and a quarter of sway if I hadn't had any bracing behind that. So what I'm doing here is I'm making a makeshift track that the 1/4-inch bolts will be able to slide through. So I got the bolt on one end, a 1/4-inch drill bit on the other, just as a spacer, making sure it's as even as possible. Putting this piece on here and a little bit of overlap, so that way I can hang that overlap onto the bottom portion of the L of the wall there. And so this way, as I move it, I'll just have to tighten down the 2 different knobs, and one will give it support on the front, one will give support on the back. So you can see here, moves pretty freely, as long as there's nothing on the table. It'll get caught up on some sawdust. But you get that secured down, and that was pretty well secured. And here I'm just showing, like I said, I want to be able to break this down and just use my tabletop as a tabletop workbench, do whatever I want on there. Maybe just have a place to set things down for a bit. But completely able to just disassemble or use it as needed. The last thing I decided to do here is I went through and I just added some lines with a Sharpie for incremental measurements of inches and half inches up to 6 inches total. So that way, yeah, if I just need to do like an inch, inch and a half, 4.5, whatever, I can just line up with that. Don't have to pull out the tape measure.